Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chilling Neigh Podcast, your premier VGC podcast. My name is Rashil, aka Conkeldunk. I'm joined by my co-host Sableye, and we have a special guest today, ToppoWoppo, the runner-up of the most recent global challenge. How you doing, man?
Doing good. Currently on my lunch break. Got a whole hour. Excited to be here. It's an honor to be on this podcast. I actually watched a lot of episodes myself on my free time. So to be featured on one is, kind of like a dream come true.
Appreciate it, appreciate it. Well, we are super excited to have you. We talked a little bit before about, we talked a little bit before the global challenge or kind of during day one, but super excited to see kind of following your run and awesome you did. But first, want to kind of take a step back and ask you a little bit about how you got into Pokemon VGC and like I know you have obviously a huge Twitch channel, so kind of how you got into streaming.
Yeah, of course. So like Pokemon itself, I've been a fan of Pokemon for well over 20 years. I think my first game was like Pokemon Red back in 1999 when on my 7th birthday. Um, so I've been a big fan of Pokemon since then, but I didn't get into VGC until I guess 2020. So the way I got into VGC back during quarantine, I was like, like working from home, and I'll watch like Twitch streams while I work from home, and I was following the Pokemon channel, and I think at the time it was like June or July, um, of that year, and they had something called the Players Cup, which was like an online, um, it was like a huge online tournament in the Sword and Shield era, and I just tuned in because I'm like, you know what, I don't really got anything else to watch, and for some reason I just got hooked, like watching that. And I think, funnily enough, part of why I watched the Players Cup extensively, I think like I was following the Pokemon channel, but I was like one of those guys before getting into VGC who was like, I hate legendary Pokemon. I hate how like competitive players use these legendary Pokemon. It's so lame. It's so unoriginal. Everyone uses the same mon. But like the Players Cup, it was I think Series 5 of VGC at that time. There were no legendaries except for I think the like Terrakion and Cobalion and all that. But
Mhm.
nobody really used those. So I'm like, oh, this is like a non-legendary format. I want to watch this, and then I did. Um, and then I got into VGC basically because of that. Um, and then I started like watching VGC streamers at the time during quarantine, and then and I started like playing myself. I got into Master Ball, and I'm like, you know what? If they stream like VGC and I can get into Master Ball just like them, like why don't I try streaming it? So that's basically how I got into streaming VGC and well VGC in general.
That's awesome.
Nice. So real quick. So I know you stream Toppo, and obviously
Yep.
you stream pretty much only hard trick room. Excuse me, right? So how do you play? Because I think I saw one stat you were at like 800 games 1 month. How do you play
Yep.
800 games of hard trick room? I would go insane.
Man, I actually don't know how I do it. Like, I'm actually surprised I don't go insane. But I think just part of it is just honestly streaming it. Like, I think if I were to play offline, there's no way that
Oh yeah.
I could do that. But I think when I'm like playing on stream, my nerves like calm a bit. I'm talking to chat, I'm answering questions, I'm having a laugh, laughing at things that like my chat might say. Offline, I definitely could not do that. And I think part of it is just one, having fun with it, two, just enjoying like the team that I built, and seeing that it works out and it's successful on ladder. And I guess like three, just a drive towards reaching my content creation goals.
Yep.
And streaming consistently is just one of them. And I think just being able to have fun while streaming, it just does it makes it feel like not a chore, and it just makes me feel like I'm getting something done, doing something productive.
Yep. For sure. Makes a lot of
So,
sense.
were you always so I know I actually have to ask you about this a little bit on Twitter, but I was curious like
Yep.
when did you get into Hard Trick Room? How did you like learn, I guess, about Hard Trick
Yep.
Room? What were you playing beforehand? Yeah, how did that kind of all happen?
Yeah, yeah. So, I actually wasn't originally a Trick Room player at all. The first real archetype that I played was actually Rain. So even though I didn't truly get into VGC until 2020, like I still knew how to like EV train and IV train. I still like knew about like strategies. I think I originally got into Rain because back during X and Y, I remember I played somebody online in a X and Y, like Wi-Fi battles that used a Rain team. I think they specifically used like a Politoed and a Ludicolo, and I got like washed by it. And when I tried VGC for the first time back in like 2019, I decided to build my own Rain team. And then when the Players Cup came back after I took like an 8-month, 7-month hiatus from Sword and Shield, I went back to playing a Rain team. And I just played like a Rain team throughout Series 5, Series 6, partially throughout Series 7, and then Series 8, which was like a single restricted format back in Sword and Shield. I played Kyogre because, again, just, Rain, and I just loved Rain teams. And I got into I actually hated Trick Room at first because I would always lose to it, because like I didn't really know how to team build. In my Rain team, it just didn't do enough damage to like knock out like a Trick Room setter or like be able to deal with like follow me Trick Room. So I actually hated Trick Room at first. I would like rage every time I played against it. I go like, why can't I beat this? And then one day I matched against That's a +1 back in like 2020 on the cart ladder in Sword and Shield, and he was using like a Sunroom team, and he shared his team because like you could like preview, you could like look at your opponent's team if they're willing to share it back in Sword and Shield. And I looked at it, and then I think I went to his stream and I like grabbed like the code from like his VOD. And then like months later in like 2021, I was like, you know what? I'll just build a Trick Room team just for laughs. I'm like, I'm never gonna play Trick Room. Like I hate Trick Room. Trick Room sucks. And then one day I just got bored of playing Rain. I'm like, all right, you know what? I actually will play Trick Room. And I started winning. I'm like, oh, this is why people play Trick Room. Like, it's easy wins. And then from then I just stuck with Trick Room, and I took back what I said about Trick Room. So.
I love that. And then when did your camera flip upside down for your streams? When was that?
Yeah. So that was actually something that I did like years ago, like way before like I started streaming VGC. Well, back then, like all I streamed was like League of Legends, but I got like no viewers because I mean, who's gonna watch some like random person like who's not big in League of Legends? But I think I had a friend who would do that. He would like flip his camera like upside down, just for laughs. And I remember I started doing that as well, just for laughs. And then I think back in 2023, there's this this British player. He goes by Jarshal on Twitter. I don't know his real name, but yeah, he goes by Jarshal. And I was watching his stream, and I remember he somehow made his webcam on Twitch. It was just like a circle, and I was like, "Yo, Jarshal, that's so cool that your camera is just a circle instead of like a square like everybody else." And then I got the idea. I'm like, wait a second, didn't I like 6 years ago like always used to stream with like my camera upside down? Like, why don't I do that, just for shits and giggles? And I also thought I could also make it a joke because I could say that I'm in Trick Room and I'm under twisted dimensions, and it was also just like an idea to sort of like stand out for, I guess, like from like other streamers, right? To like do something a little bit different, to like kind of like attention grab. So that's also what it was. But now it's now like when I don't stream with an upside down camera, it's like kind of weird. So I mean, it's just become a part of my brand now. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this is gonna be the first time a lot of people see you right
Side up.
Yeah.
Real quick though, just one quick thing. So when I stream, obviously my camera is very much so right side up, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of have my layout open, right? So I'm kind of monitoring what's going on. When you look at your webcam, do you actually like monitor and see yourself upside down? Like that's got to be weird, right?
Actually, I do see myself upside down because I do see myself upside down because I got OBS pulled up and all that. But funnily enough, it's not. It actually feels weirder if I am looking at myself right side up because I have a channel redeem for 5,000 points where people can flip me right side up. And anytime I'm flipped right side up, I'm like, that actually looks kind of weird. Like I don't like it. And I'm just like anxiously anticipating for somebody to spend another 5k channel points to flip me upside down again. But yeah, no, at this point it's like I want to be upside down personally. Of course, if somebody flips me, I'm gonna oblige, right? And I'm gonna flip it. But I highly prefer just being upside down. I just think it's funnier, and I just like the aesthetic of it better for whatever reason.
Cool. So I have flipped you upside down for the rest of the podcast on the YouTube channel, by the way, just in case anybody was wondering.
So this is one of the questions we actually got on Twitter, which
Yep.
I think lines up right now perfectly with what we were talking about, which is, so obviously you know, like fast forward to now, you're crushing it with Hard Trick Room. You know, you kind of played it like Ryan was talking about, like
Yep.
all the time. And you know, getting second in the global challenge with it is kind of like insane in the sense of like obviously getting second in the global challenge just in general is insane.
Mhm.
But I think a lot of people view Hard Trick Room as like maybe like more linear and kind of maybe easier to win at maybe like against the average player, but against like, you know, the
Yep.
top level players, it's, you know, it requires a lot of skill, and we see,
Mhm.
you know, like Hard Trick Room players don't tend to do well unless they're like, you know, the best players in the world, like
Right.
Alex Soto or, you know,
Mhm.
Brian Collins. So I guess how did you approach, you know, going into like you know, a semi-serious tournament like the global challenge
Yep.
with something like Hard Trick Room, and how are you able to kind of perform at that high level?
Yeah. So I'm like very open about this, right? Like I don't consider myself a competitor, right? I don't go to majors. I don't even go to locals really. I've been to one local and two majors in my entire lifetime. So I'm like very open about that. So my team, I guess like my team building approach, it's very best of one oriented. Because yeah, admittedly, you know, I don't play in tournaments. I don't play open team sheets best of three. I have before, but you know that's not my normal content. My normal content is just closed team sheets, best of one, and you know I go into team building with the mindset, hey, like I'm just gonna build something that you know is gonna perform super well on ladder because you know that's pretty much all I play. Um, so that's basically how I do my team approach. I don't like go into it like thinking like, would this be good in like best of three? Like if I were to play a best of three against someone with this team, like wouldn't they annihilate me? You know, because they would see that this tech is you know on my team. Like you know, I don't care about that. For me, it's just like you know, I just want to go on ladder. I want to have a consistent high win rate on ladder, and that's basically how I designed the team. Like just based on I just like sort of like collected in my head like okay what are like some like common threats that like I had like trouble with you know on ladder like and like what can I build on this team, what item can I give to this you know Pokemon so that can like get around this like particular hurdle that typically inhibits my team. So I'd say that's pretty much like the major thing, I guess, as to like why the team did well. It's because I took a very best of one approach to this. I mean, I just almost always take like a best of one approach to like team building. Almost never best of three open team sheets because you know again that's just not what I play.
That makes sense. Um, so can you talk us through the team a bit on like kind
Yeah.
of, you know, ones, any like specific techs that you kind of had, you know, like you were saying for best of one, and you know
Yep.
how it came into play?
Yep. Of course. Um, funnily enough, I actually don't really consider like Calyrex Ice Rider to be like the most important piece on the team. You know, even though it is a single restricted format,
Mhm.
and you know, usually I think a lot of people they center the team around that restricted, but I feel like you know every piece you know on this team is equally as important. And I almost feel like Calyrex Ice Rider is not the most important piece. So I mean I have Indeedee, right? Indeedee, it actually has a focus sash. The reason I gave it a focus sash was just because I guess I was like too lazy, or I just didn't want to go through like all the like different calcs of like what it can survive, what it can't. So I just thought, you know what? I'm just gonna throw a sash on it. Like it's gonna guarantee survive at least one
Yeah.
thing, right? Um, and I don't even have to think about it. And also because, it's closed team sheets. Like, there'll be people who think, oh, I'm just going to click, like, Wicked Blow, or I'm going to click, like, a Shanpao Throat Chop into this Indeedee. I'm just going to OHKO it, and I'm going to hit the Calyrex with whatever. But, there's a surprise factor of closed team sheets, and, Focus Sash. And then I gave it Grass Terra just because pretty much all my teams throughout this era, they're centered around having at least, like, 3 counters to Amoonguss, on the team. So yeah, the Grass Terror specifically because of Amoonguss, even though I feel like I didn't run into too many Amoongusses, and I almost never terrored my Indeedee, but I have it there just for the peace of mind. And then of course the Focus Sash, just so like, I don't have to run like every single calc to think like, oh, like what does it survive, what doesn't it? It's like it's guaranteed going to survive something, and possibly 2 hits if they double up into it. So that's the Indeedee. And then the Calyrex, I mean that's pretty self-explanatory. It actually is a min speed Calyrex. It's not like the Tang's Calyrex, which I think are adamant and have like some pretty significant speed investment. Like mine is just min speed, right? And yeah, it's actually just a simple 252, 2524 build. I didn't really put any complicated EVs on it. Just 252 HP, 252 attack, and then I forgot what the rest of the 4 are. Either defense or special defense, one or the other. And yeah, that's just there to click Glacial Lance, pick up kills, get those Chilling Neigh boosts. And yeah, and then you got the Terra Water, just because it's like, standard Terra, and it resists a lot of stuff. It's neutral into a lot. And then I have the Hatterene. So originally, I actually had Torkoal over Hatterene, but I felt like Torkoal was like a little hard to use because of like all the rain, like both like Pelipper and Kyogre, and I just hated playing the Weather War. There were like so many times where like even though my opponent, they had rain, like I'd even bother bringing the Torkoal because I'm like I don't want to play this Weather War, like this is dumb. And I switched to Hatterene because actually one of my mods, they go by Kilda or Killed 4. Their team was actually like kind of like an inspiration for this one. Like I use like very similar Pokemon. The only difference is that they use Lunala and I use Calyrex, and they use Dark Urshifu and I use Water Urshifu. And I remember I always lose to like Kilda on ladder because like their team just like straight up counters mine, and there's like really nothing I can do about it. But I remember I tried to kill this team because they let me borrow the rental, and I'm like, this lineup of 6 is like amazing. Like I can just slap Calyrex Ice on it instead of Lunala, and I can just like sort of make it my own. So yeah, I used Hatterene because of Magic Bounce, immunity to statuses, being able to set up Trick Room, and also not having to rely on weather. I mean, it kind of relies on Psychic Terrain, but also like with like Life Orb and Dazzling Gleam, it can still hit really hard. But like unlike Torkoal, it just doesn't become like useless when like rain comes up. So that's like a reason why I included Hatterene. And also with Hatterene, I included Psychic Terra on it with Psychic as a single target move. The idea behind that is to get around Wide Guard, and also again, like closed team sheets, it's to snipe Zamazentas. So if I go Psychic Terra with Life Orb, and I click Helping Hand Psychic into a Zamazenta and it chooses Wide Guard, that Zamazenta's gone in 1 hit, and then there's no more Wide Guard for the rest of the game. And I actually did that several times with Hatterene, and actually won a lot of games against Zama by doing that. So that's the Hatterene. And then we got the Choice Band Water Urshifu with Water Terra. I originally had Dark Urshifu, but the reason I don't like Dark Urshifu anymore, even though it's better against Dondozo, the reason I don't like it anymore is just because it had trouble with mods that held Sash. So, for example, like against Chien-Pao, right, you can't OHKO it, and then it's also weak against Sacred Sword, which Chien-Paos typically carry. With Water Urshifu, you click Surging Strikes once into the Chien-Pao, it's gone, whether it has Sash or not. Right, and then it's also, they usually go like Ghost Terra, so like terrestrializing doesn't matter in front of it, and then also it just like naturally resists most of the moves that Chien-Pao carries, minus Sacred Sword, which doesn't really do much to it, and then also it's good against Pelipper in the rain, funnily enough, right? Like if a Pelipper's carrying Focus Sash, you're not going to kill it with Choice Band Dark Urshifu, but with Water Terra, Rapid Strike Urshifu, like especially with the Pelipper setting up the rain for you, you can actually OHKO it. like that. Well, assuming that you Terra. I think if you don't Terra, you don't Oko the Pelipper, depending on how much defense it has. But like when you water Terra the Urshifu with Choice Man, it Okos the Pelipper even if they have Sash, right? So, and also you take advantage of the rain that your opponent sets up, which was also the idea. And then of course, last but not least, we have I feel like it actually better counters Calyrex Shadow as well over Dark Urshifu. Like it sounds crazy, right? Because you think oh, like one Wicked Blow, you just KO the Calyrex Shadow, but most Calyrex Shadows they carry Terra Fairy, right? So if they Terra Fairy, your Dark Urshifu is just screwed, and it can't do any damage to it unless it's carrying something like Poison Jab. But with Water Urshifu, you don't even have to think about it. You just click Surging Strikes, and I think like depending on like how it's like trained, it can I think Oko the Calyrex Shadow. And yeah, that was basically the idea behind it. Unless they were like carrying like Terra Grass or Terra Water, but I don't think that's as common as like Terra Fairy. So yeah, and then what were the last two? The last two were Ursaluna. I mean, that's just good against Miraidon, and then also Gallade, which, it's a wide guard setter, it has Psychic Seed, and it's also good against Miraidon because it's Terra Ground. So yeah, those, Gallade and Ursaluna were just there to counter Miraidon teams, especially like the World Champions team. So, yeah, those were the 6.
That makes sense. I know, so this was something that I saw you post a while back. Curious if you kind of held this over, but I know that at one point you had a list of people that were like imprisoned Trick Room users on ladder, and you had like Roar or Saluna to kind of counter that. Is that something that you still kept up or can play at all at the GC? I'm curious.
So funnily enough, no, I didn't use it to roar out Imprison, because I feel like every Imprison user I ran into this time was just someone carrying Imprison on Calyrex Ice Rider, and I can't really like tell from like team select, like if that Calyrex is carrying Imprison. The one Imprison Calyrex I did encounter in the GC, it was on day 3. It actually had Imprison Protect instead of Imprison Trick Room, so I got kind of lucky there. And then I was able to bring in my Urshifu and just KO with close combat, banded close combat. But I actually did use Roar one time in this GC, but it wasn't for Trick Room. It was against a bulk up Groudon. So I brought it in, and there was a turn. Yeah, the Groudon got up, bulk up like once or twice, and then there was one turn where I called, okay, yeah, this Groudon's 100% going to protect this turn, and it did. And then I roared it out, and it lost all its bulk up boosts, and I ended up winning the game.
Dang.
Beautiful.
So so it's not just for Imprison. It's also really good for like setup mons, and also like even like Iron Defense, Zamazenta, which I actually haven't encountered in quite some time. So
makes sense.
Back in the day, Roar Incineroar used to be a thing because, the Xerneas was everywhere, right? So you'd end up going for like either fake out, or you could fake out the other slot, let the Geomancy happen, and then the next turn you live the Moonblast because you'd be EV'd for it, and you just roar out the Xerneas, and it would be like, all right, bye. So it's like, it's fun to see it still be around despite like, there's no Xerneas anymore, but you get to still do cool stuff like that. So it's always fun to see.
Yeah.
Definitely. So curious on like what tips you would give other people when they're prepping for, their next GC run, and they're trying to think of, okay, like how should I build and prep for this tournament?
Yeah, I'd say honestly, I say like the biggest piece of advice is, stick to what you know, right? Like I actually me personally, and this is all anecdotal, right? Everyone might have a different GC experience. For some people, maybe sticking to what they know, or using a team that they typically do well with outside the GC might not do well in the GC. But for me, like I literally just used the same exact team that I've been laddering with for like the past like maybe like 4 or 5 weeks. I didn't change anything on it. Like I just went in here like thinking that this was like maybe like ladder on steroids, and I just played. I honestly just played the game. Like I don't think I did anything special. I didn't do any sort of prep. I just went into this thinking I'm gonna stream it because people love watching the GC, right? Like people, like even I do. Like when I got off stream, I was like looking for somebody who was streaming it. I'm like, come on, there's got to be somebody streaming. I want to watch their run.
Yeah.
So I basically just went in with the mindset of like, hey, like this is what I know. I play Trick Room really well. It seemed to have done really well when I was playing ladder. And yeah, I'm just gonna play. And like I don't know. I feel like it's like hard for me to like tell people like don't stress about it, right? Because like I think for a lot of people who are playing the GC, they're playing straight for points because they want to get their Worlds invite. Like obviously I'm not going to Worlds, and as I've said, I'm not a competitor, so like there's not that same level of pressure for me. So like for me, I can very easily tell myself, don't worry about how you do. Like I went into this like not caring about how I did because like the championship points, they don't mean anything to me. I can't do anything with them, except to like brag about it and say like, oh, I got second place at championship points. But for a lot of people, I get it. It's harder. Easier said than done. To say go into this with like zero expectations and don't stress about, how you do. But I mean, honestly, if I were to give advice, that'd probably be it. I'd say just like do as I did, play for fun. Obviously that's not going to apply to a lot of people playing the GC, but in my situation, I guess like for people, especially who don't compete, play it for fun, play it for the content if you're a streamer. Yeah.
No, I like that. And I mean, play for fun is definitely, I think, something that like gets forgotten, right? Like when you play at like a high level of the game, because everybody, like you said, they're stressing out. I'm personally, I'm one of them. I'm panicking every time I have to play this GC, right? So like I'm probably the wrong guy here, but like it's interesting to like sometimes just take a step back and remember we play this game, right? Like you're not. It's very rare that Pokemon is gonna be like your job. You're not, even if you win the GC, you're not making millions of dollars. You don't have to show up. It's not like you don't have to show up to work on Monday, right?
Yeah.
There's very few people that can call Pokemon their job. So it's like at the end of the day, if we're not having fun playing Pokemon, okay, I don't know where my thought was going, but like if we're like detrimental and like not happy with it, why are we playing the game, right? So like we gotta play for fun, right?
Yeah.
Like the moment we lose the fun in the game, where's the point?
Yeah, I think the GC especially is very easy to just kind of tilt off the plate, the earth, especially if you find something that's like, I mean, that's what I was doing this past weekend. I was having a nightmarish GC run, and it was, there was points where I was like, and I'm not even competing this year. And for me, I was like, why am I even stressing about this? So totally makes sense, and I think that's really good advice for everyone who's playing the GC, even when they're competing. Is like, I think everyone kind of goes into it pretty stressed and like excited when they do well, but it's really disheartening when you run into like some counter team or just get crit, and now you're like you're dropping a bunch of points when you thought, okay, I'll just play one more. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I would say as well. Is just like you just gotta play it out and have fun, and then you gotta hope for the best. And we have like a ton of GCs and only like 3 for the BFL anyway, so I think like you have a lot of shots at it, and not every shot is gonna end up mattering. So
Yeah. And
I think it's really good.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to add, because Ryan said what he said. Yeah, like having fun actually is a huge component of it. Because if I were to think about it, I'd say almost every GC before this, even though I'm not a competitor, like I still like was so hard focused on trying to get like a certain rating, right? Just to like I don't know, like prove myself in some way. So like typically I'd like go like, okay, I'm gonna get to 1700, and then I'm gonna stop playing the GC. Right, like even though I don't compete, like I'm gonna get to 1700 and I'm gonna stop there because I want to say I got to 1700 rating. But like you told me, Conk, on the first day of the GC, like just play it out, right? Like you got nothing to lose, right? And I went into it with that mindset, and the first time I go into it with that mindset of just play it out. Who cares if I get 1700 or not? Like I'm just gonna play it because like I'm a streamer and it's great for content. And ironically enough, this was like the best performance I've ever had compared to every other GC before that, where I actually was like kind of like laser focused on like, okay, I'm gonna play until like this rating and I'm gonna stop right there and I'm not gonna play anymore. So
Yeah,
it does help with
that
the
makes a
mental.
lot of sense. Oh, definitely, and that's how I felt too for my tournaments, where it's like my better performances versus my worst ones is definitely the ones where I'm like, ironically putting the most pressure on yourself, and you end
Oh,
up
yeah.
you kind of screw yourself over. So Yeah, I think at the end of the day, this is all just a hobby. We're all playing Mons for fun, and I think that's kind of important for everyone to remember for sure. Um, Brian, any other questions that you kind of had for Toppo?
Oh, I mean, I'm gonna throw out the one I always like throwing out. And that's Toppo. If you could change your team and you couldn't have played Hard Trick Room, what would you have brought to the GC?
Man, I feel like if I couldn't have played Hard Trick Room, would it be cheating to say balance Cali Ice or no?
I'll allow it. It's a different core.
Okay.
I'll allow
Um,
it.
all right. You know what? Even though I just asked that, I probably wouldn't have brought that just because just Cali Ice without Trick Room just feels so off to me. I mean, I know Alex Underhill did that and he got like top 10, but for me, I just can't do that. I do not know how to play Cali Ice balance. I tried it before and I got absolutely destroyed. But I'd say I probably would have brought Miraidon.
Oh,
I tried like Miraidon for like the first time back in December, and I think I had a lot of fun with that. I had a lot of fun with Miraidon, and uh, and also I actually had a lot of fun with that Cali Shadow Wheezing Dozo team. Now that's normally not my playstyle, but I tried that team that 45 mice Justin Knox made, and I had so much fun with it. I mean, it kind of sucked getting like outsped at times, or getting what is it, clear smogged or hazed, but probably one of those two. I probably would have brought Cali. I probably would have brought Cali Shadow Wheezing, or I would have brought some sort of Miraidon team.
yeah, cool. I always like asking that question because it's like one of the things I feel like people just aren't ready to answer, and it's like
Yeah.
you actually see like, oh, like yeah, then you actually like kind of get the thought process out of it. But that was cool.
Yep.
Miraidon's a funny guy. I ran physical Miraidon, aka Choice Bandit Koraidon, but like.
I faced Choice Bandit Cried on Ashton Cox was running it too. It hits pretty crazy. It hits
It's
pretty
so
crazy.
dumb.
Also, Toppo, did you end up facing like any kind of like top players that you were like, oh my god, I can't like this is a crazy match I'm playing, or any kind of highlight matches you had from the GC?
Yeah, day one I played against actually right now off the top of my head the only notable player I immediately remember, actually no, I played against Ploppy 14. Um he's a really good player. I think he's won like a whole bunch of grassroots on Limitless. I also played against Mr. Rishi, who's
Yep.
also done really well in a past GC. I think he went as high as like 1770 and like sat at like rank one before. He played like a really cool team that had like Sun, Koraidon, and had like a whole bunch of like proto mines, and then he also had I think it was like a min speed Glastrier, which I wasn't expecting, that had iron defense. I had a lot of trouble with that. I very luckily managed to snag the win in that one, but that really caught me off guard. Um, and then what other notable players have I played? I don't. There was like one other person that I played on day one. I'm pretty sure that I knew
Mhm.
that like I knew, but I don't think I remember. I don't think I remember who they were.
Okay.
But yeah, aside from Ploppy and Mr. Rishi, I don't fully remember everybody. But those are like the two like most notable people that came to my head.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, this time we had all of, Japan playing and all the normal suspects, so it was a pretty huge challenge. Still insanely impressive. Getting second place. I also want, well, I'll give you the floor to shout out, but also obviously everyone should definitely check out
Yes.
Toppo's Twitch channel and his Twitter. He posts awesome clips that I look forward to all the time of him pulling off trick room shenanigans. So I love it. But any kind of shout outs or anything that you wanna kind of last thoughts before we hop off here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as far as shout outs go, shout out to everyone, who follows and supports me on Twitter, on Twitch, to my moderation team for holding down the chat, while I was playing the GC, and for every stream that I do, to my wife. And then also I feel like I should have given this shout out like probably like days ago, but also once again to my mod Kilda, aka Killed 4, because their Lunala team is actually what inspired this team composition to begin with. I probably should have given that shout out like long ago, but better late than never. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Awesome,
Awesome.
awesome. Well, That's it for us this week. But thank you again so much, Toppo, for hopping on. This was awesome, and as a Trick Room fan myself, I love it. I know this was probably torture for Ryan. Two guys that love Trick Room, played some Dozo too. Not his not his ideal team archetypes, but love talking all things Trick Room with you. And again, congrats again for an insane placement.
Yes.
Super excited to see what you cook up for the next GCs, and then in the next formats too. Once we have hopefully two restricted, so let's see where they go with that. But yeah, thank you again, and thank you everyone for listening. And we'll link all of Toppo's
Yeah.
Twitch, Twitter, all that stuff in the description. So yeah, definitely check them out. But thanks again.
See you guys.
So yeah, thank you for having me.